Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session on library services for migrant farm workers and families with guest presenter Kelly Dolan. I'm Joy Warland. I'm the Continuing Education and Small and Rural Libraries Consultant at the Vermont Department of Libraries, and I'm very excited to welcome Kelly Dolan. She is the Migrant Education Programs Coordinator, where she oversees program development, daily operations, and supervises staff. She has a master's degree from UV Community Development and Applied Economics and is currently pursuing a second master's in educational leadership. She worked as the UVM's Peace Corps recruiter and served as a volunteer in Guatemala and Panama. Please reach out to Kelly with any of your questions during this, and I think probably afterwards we can sometimes pick her brain a little bit too. I hope she'll be open for that. And so welcome, Kelly, and thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks everyone for just your interest. We, as you know, the Migrant Education Program have definitely collaborated with libraries and used them as a resource for students, and just are really excited to have this opportunity to share a little bit about both the Migrant Education Program and the work that we do, and also just in terms of the population that we serve, and just to provide a little bit more of the background information that may prove helpful in terms of connecting more. So I am going to share some information now through my screen. And great. Are folks seeing the intro page for a PowerPoint in presentation right now?
Yes, looks great. Thanks.
Awesome. Great. So in terms of the game plan for today and the information I'm hoping to be able to share with all of you, and also just sort of solicit some ideas from you as well. So first of all, just to delve into who is a migrant farm worker, there's a lot of different ideas in terms of what who those individuals are, and in particular who those individuals are in the state of Vermont. So what types of programs and resources already exist that are providing support within our communities, and particularly in regards to education to farm workers? So we're going to delve a little bit into that question. And then we're going to discuss a little bit in terms of what the barriers are when it comes to accessing resources within the community. And this goes for migrant farm workers themselves, but also for, you know, larger, more broadly, their families. And then later, our program works in particular with education. So we spend a lot of time discussing the educational needs of farm workers and having those conversations with farm workers themselves. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit, just so that you have some background and awareness in terms of what types of what types of supports may be of interest and beneficial. And then I'm just really excited to have more of an open discussion regarding how libraries and other community-based programs can help to bridge the gap between migrant farm workers and those and the resources that do exist, and what programs have been very successful in doing so in the past, just so we can so I can provide a little bit in terms of what models have worked well. Awesome. Great. So right off the bat, I would be really curious, and feel free to, you know, unmute yourself and provide any thoughts. So in terms of your perception, who is a migrant farm worker, and what does the word migrant mean? So feel free to unmute yourself, and any thoughts or ideas on this would be great. Anyone have any thoughts, or in terms of experience that you may have had in the past? Someone says they don't have a microphone, but they did put something in the chat, it looks like. Someone who has to leave their home to seek work. Okay. Awesome. That's actually really useful information and helpful to hear. What we often see, a migrant worker who works in ag. Okay, interesting. So oftentimes we see a lot of these different terms conflated. So we see, you know, when we say we work with migrant farm workers, we have a lot of questions. Oh, do you work with refugees? Is everybody that you work with an immigrant? And so we spend a lot of time just in terms of, you know, outreach, clarifying who is a migrant farm worker and what does that mean? And oftentimes it does depend on who is doing the defining. But in general, a migrant can be an immigrant, but is not necessarily an immigrant. An immigrant is someone who makes a conscious decision to leave his or her home and move to a foreign country with the intention of settling there. And as the person that actually put a note in the chat here, let's see, that looks like, I can't see their name, but a migrant, which is a little bit different, is someone who is moving from place to place within his or her country or across borders, usually for economical reasons, and oftentimes that is seasonal work. And in terms of being a farm worker, this would be seasonal farm work. So now kind of getting more into the nitty-gritty in terms of the state of Vermont. For individuals that we serve, 95% of those individuals served through the UVM Farm Worker programming work in dairy. Within the state of Vermont, there's currently, this number has dropped actually since we last did this presentation, but about 225 farms that outsource labor. And that means they hire, you know, a lot of farms are very small in Vermont, and so they're just using their own, you know, within the family, doing most of the work. So outsourcing would be hiring externally. And then in terms of who those individuals are, again, this number has dropped, but there's about 670, give or take, individuals on any given day working in the state of Vermont who are Latinx workers, mostly from Mexico and some from Guatemala. I would say probably about 80% from Mexico and about 20% from Guatemala and other countries in Central America. The map on the right-hand side is really interesting. Each dot on that map actually represents a worker and their location, or more or less their location within the state of Vermont. The reason that we inserted that line 100 miles from Canada, I don't know if you can see that on the right-hand side, is that that represents the working area for Border Patrol. So that means that Border Patrol can work within 100 miles of the international border. And so you can also notice that many of the individuals who are Latinx are located within that area of Border Patrol. And so that just sort of informs a lot of the mobility and other concerns regarding barriers that we'll get into later. So in terms of migrant farm workers within Vermont, there's a number of different organizations that help to support migrant farm workers, and they all have a different role. And some of these organizations also have a different geographic focus. So we could see there's Addison Allies. Addison and Central West Vermont is thought to be, in terms of farm workers, a resource-rich area of the state. So in terms of being a farm worker, if you are living in Central West, if you're living in Addison County, you're much more likely to be able to connect with resources given the amount that are available there. Many of you may be familiar with Migrant Justice, who is a workers' rights organization. Also Milk with Dignity, many of you may have heard of their work and their collaboration with Ben and Jerry's, for example. And they're very concerned and work with dairy co-ops regarding securing dignified working conditions in the dairy supply chain. Let's see. Oh, and thank you, Joy. Joy is asking if folks can put in the chat where their library is located. That would be great to know. The Open Door Clinic is a free health clinic located in Addison County, Vermont, and they provide free healthcare services for farm workers. And then we're really fortunate within UVM Extension. There's a number of researchers that are doing fantastic work. One is Teresa Morris, who recently, I think it was last year, put out a book regarding food security and migrant farm workers in Vermont, which is great. Dr. Dan Baker, that did research on stress among migrant farm workers in the state, and Maria Mercedes Avila, that has done research regarding racial disparities in healthcare. So just a little bit of background in terms of what's been going on statewide. And then I'm really fortunate to work with UVM Extension. We have a group of programs that exist within Extension that support farm workers. One is Bridges to Health. Their work is in relation to regarding equal opportunities for access to health for farm workers, and specifically for Latinx farm workers. They also have another program called Huertas, which does family gardens for farm workers, and they're located mostly in Northwest Vermont. And they're very focused on providing culturally appropriate starts for gardens, which is really, really cool. We also have another program, high school equivalency program, and that helps folks farm workers get their GED. And that is a federally funded program through the Department of Ed. And lastly is a program that I help to, that I oversee, and that is the Migrant Education Program. And this is just their stated goal for Migrant Ed, is to ensure that all migrant students reach challenging academic standards that prepare them for responsible citizenship, further learning, and productive employment. So in terms of the actual individuals that we serve through Migrant Ed, there's two different groups. Half of who we serve are children in school. And so these are kids where they've moved across school district line, their parent has engaged in agricultural work, and they have not yet graduated from high school. Farm workers qualify. These are predominantly male. I think we're about 70% male at this point. They're under the age of 22, have not graduated from high school, and have also been considered migrant just in terms of their mobility patterns, and have engaged in agricultural work as well. Yep, so, and then as I mentioned, about 50-50 split between those two groups, and annually we serve about 300 students. And just going back to that question of like, who is a migrant farm worker? The perception often is we're talking about individuals who are from Mexico, but the reality is that half of the children that we serve are non-Hispanic white, and so it's not necessarily the case that all are Spanish speaking. And you can see there, these are all photos of students of ours that have participated in the program. All right, great. And that's just the breakdown in terms of age, as I mentioned, about 50-50 split. IT would be infant, toddler, out of school youth are farm workers themselves. If you, I know many of you are interacting with families, you're interacting with children through your work, and certainly just kind of having an ear attuned to students that mention that their parents work in agriculture, for example. It is quite possible that they may be eligible for our program, so I can certainly share referral information, and it is available on our website. So if you do interact with a family, you know that their parents are working in dairy or in any other type of agricultural work, they may be eligible. This, as part of school registration for kids, they always have to complete something called the agricultural survey. And in that, they ask about, have you moved within the last 2 years? And then also, have you engaged in agricultural work? These kids on the left, this was actually a school visit we did to Vermont Tech. We did a tour there for some students in high school and had a really fun time. Another program that I mentioned really briefly, the New England High School Equivalency Program. This is for individuals who are looking to get their GED. And it is for nationwide, it's about 6,000 students annually. Within Vermont, it's a much smaller population. The exciting part about what we're doing in Vermont is that it is a completely virtual program, completely online, and that's much different from other programs across the country. And it's been really interesting for us to kind of move towards this much more virtually based model in the face of everything going on with COVID. I'm not sure. I think something just came up. I got a notification. I just want to see if that was a question or anything.
It was just another person joining.
Okay, thanks, Joy. So it's been really helpful that just, right before things started to really happen with COVID, and it became very necessary to put all these social distancing measures in place, that we had this existing online framework to work from. Okay, great. So just kind of delving a little bit into the barriers that exist for the farm worker communities across the state of Vermont. What types of barriers do you think face migrant farm workers looking to access resources in their community? I would definitely anticipate that many of the barriers that you see already are similar to individuals that you work with, but there may be some additional ones as well that are specific to this population. So are there ideas that come to mind or barriers that you would anticipate may exist? And feel free to unmute yourself or put something in the chat if that's easier. Lack of transportation, absolutely. Language, cultural differences. Some more folks typing in. Fear of deportation, absolutely. Transportation, knowledge and what services there are and where they are. That's so true. Difficulty obtaining resources like library cards without a permanent address. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you nailed it. Access to everyday needs like groceries. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys really, absolutely. All of these things are challenges that farm workers face. And there are, many programs, including ours, that are working to help support farm workers, but the need is pretty significant compared to the services that are available. So just breaking down some of the barriers that you have already mentioned and adding a little bit more to what you've already identified. One being cost. I think it's interesting to see, for example, our sister program, Bridges to Health. They help a lot of migrant farmers fill out financial paperwork for healthcare centers that have, for example, a sliding scale. And many farm workers are sending money back home to their country of origin, where they may be sending, where they may have 3 children, or their parents may live there. And so their household size is only 1, but in reality, their paycheck is actually to support, 5 people that may be living back home. And so the actual perception versus reality for that person is very different. Also, instability, and this is very true, particularly right now with the volatility of the dairy industry. It's been really tough, and I'm sure many of you have seen in the news how dairy is having a difficult time. Mobility, absolutely. Farm workers in general, highly mobile populations. And because they're constantly moving around, and somebody put that in the chat about the challenge of having a permanent address, we run into this too as well with trying to enroll students into school. They need some sort of proof of address, and many of our students don't have that. Or participating in adult educational and literacy programs where they're often mailed paperwork. It's not easy. The other is the lack of transportation. Many of you may have also seen the news stories regarding the DMV and concerns about racial profiling that was happening there in the past. So there's a lot that feeds into that fear, fear of being out and being public, particularly, and this is sort of jumping over to that fear column, within the state of Vermont that is not, as we all know, a very diverse state. Individuals that may be going to do something as simple as going to the supermarket can be targeted just based on the fact that they're speaking Spanish or out in a public space, and that is a significant challenge for many farm workers. The lack of documentation status absolutely is a big concern. And also just overwhelming systems. There's not a lack of bureaucratic systems in other countries as well, but it's always hard to navigate some of those systems when you're coming to a new place. And then to add to that, a lot of these concerns have been intensified with COVID-19 and just concern about the illness itself and concerns about potentially getting sick. We have seen that many farm workers have decided not to send their kids to school because they are concerned about the sickness. And I know many families are in general too. Then sort of circling back around to working and living conditions, living in rural communities with limited resources. I know that's something that you're already encountering, many of you working in rural communities already. And then also in terms of work hours, many farm workers are working 7 days a week. As many as 80 hours per week. And so they have limited time, and even if they would like to go to the library, it may be hard for them to find an appropriate time to do so. And then certainly many of you mentioned the language barrier, maybe wanting to access these resources, but not having the information available in a language that they understand. And the last question of whether or not the information that is available is actually culturally appropriate for that person. So this just sort of a little bit more, it's sort of a more broad overview of some of the barriers that exist. The last part there is also kind of, the last slide was more discussing the barriers for Latinx farm workers and their families, but we also work with farm workers that are not Latinx, and there are also very significant barriers and challenges that exist for that population as well. So instability regarding housing, difficulty with transportation, lower formal education levels. We do see significant substance abuse, unfortunately, and unemployment as well. So this next slide, and just want to put this question out to all of you. And I'm sure, again, there's much overlap with the educational interests of individuals that you work with in your community already. So there's, I'm sure, a lot that's quite similar, but there may be some specific to this population as well. So if you want to chime in the chat regarding what you think the educational needs and interests of migrant farm workers may be. Yep, absolutely. There's definitely kids that want help with schoolwork. What their rights as a worker are, absolutely. Yeah. Would like, not sure, but would like to find out. That's great. Access to computers and technology, absolutely. Awesome. Educational needs, flexibility, consistency across different states. Great, thank you so much. These actually are a few different photos from programs that we've run. This is a soccer camp that a student went to. This is on the Melo Sierra boat trip. We did an educational excursion out on Lake Champlain on a research vessel that the university has. And these are some kids that participated, a family that participated in you guys, I'm sure, have heard of the Children's Literacy Foundation, so we receive and participate in their programs, and those are some kids with books from that. So just to give a sense in terms of what types of things have happened in the past. So for farm workers, we regularly have conversations about this, what are your educational interests and how can we be of support? And there are consistently ideas that come up in these conversations about what farm workers are looking to learn more about. Small business development. Many farm workers are here in Vermont. They are working very hard to save as much money as possible with the intent of someday returning to their country of origin to develop a small business, which is really fantastic. Computer and technology, somebody mentioned that in the chat. Farm workers are really eager to learn more about computers and technology. We're serving mainly a fairly young population. Pretty much, I would say, not even pretty much, I would say every single farm worker that we encounter has a smartphone. And so they're technology and used to using it as a communication tool, but excited to learn about how they can use it more expansively. They also are really interested oftentimes in expanding their understanding of dairy and how they can gain more skills that may help them to gain more security in their employment, or maybe even an increase in pay. English, absolutely. This is the one consistent thing that we are always asked about is, and understandably, they're eager to connect with others in their community and want to learn English. Another would be high school completion programs. So we have that GED program I mentioned, but others that are also available through adult educational and literacy centers as well. Some students come here and don't have the academic skills in order to enter those programs. So we're working on trying to create something that would be a little bit more of a prep program for students that are interested in pursuing a high school completion program. Mechanics, a lot of students mentioned that they are interested in learning more about working in cars and that type of thing, and engine work. And this is sort of a very significant interest. Many farm workers, when we're discussing what would you like to be doing more of, say that they would love the opportunity to spend more time exploring Vermont in a safe way, where they could feel comfortable. The types of activities that we've done where we've gone out and gone hiking, gone cross-country skiing, have been really well received and had very enthusiastic responses from students that say, we want to do more of this. And we're in the process of developing a mentoring program so that we can accomplish that goal and really meet students with this interest. So in terms of children of farm workers and their parents, this is actually, I would imagine, quite similar to other students that you work with. I would say that because of the barriers, farm working parents oftentimes have limited time to be able to connect with a library or other resources because of the irregular work hours. So they're looking for ways to create those connections when they may have newly arrived to a community. And so trying to create welcoming environments, whether it be at the school or the library, is really super important. Very enthusiastic about participating in after-school rec and summer programs, including those that are available through libraries. Having access to educational supplies and books always goes over well and is super important. Parents certainly are interested in learning English, and so are students as well, and we provide some support in doing that. And then also just sort of tutoring support after school, academic help is always an interest of parents and also of students as well, because it can be a challenge when arriving at a new school to just be able to, get a grasp of the academics. So I am curious, and I've had this conversation with Joy already, which is really great. What types of resources available through libraries may be of interest to farm workers? So what already exists, and how can libraries bridge the gap? So if you have any thoughts or ideas, or even want to unmute yourself, feel free to put those out there. Oh, free 24/7 Wi-Fi outdoors. Amen to that. Public computers, books in several languages, access to computers and internet. Absolutely. Books in their native language or help learning English. Definitely. Digital materials, including some in Spanish. Yes, thank you. Lending of non-traditional items such as tools or kitchen items. Yeah, I have heard that libraries do that, which is great. All right. Thank you very much. All of those things are a trusted partner who can lead them to what resource they seek. Absolutely. I think more than anything, even if you don't speak Spanish, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not the ability to connect with somebody, especially now that everyone or most people have smartphones using programs that do like Google Translate, where you can type a message in and be able to share it with somebody, can be really helpful. And many individuals who don't speak English are accustomed to using those types of programs. Somebody just put something additional in there. A safe physical space, not now, but normally. Yep, definitely. So the photo, not a photo, but the image on the right-hand side, I live in Waterbury, Vermont, and oftentimes go to the library there. And one day when I was visiting, I noticed this sign and I thought it was so great, and it was in Spanish, and it like brought such a huge smile to my face. And I was thinking, if I had a student with me, how much more welcome they would have felt if they were walking in the library and saw that. So I just wanted to include it there, and also just a big shout out to the Waterbury Library for making that a welcoming place. So in terms of what partners we've worked with on literacy in the past and who's been really successful, I mentioned Cliff at one point. We have partnered with their at-risk youth program, and they regularly give book donations that we provide to kids. For kids and families that are highly mobile, sometimes it can be hard to be returning library books. And so this idea of giving books sometimes is a little bit of a better model for the kids that we work with. They've also done in-person events, and they talk about, oftentimes in those presentations, about how you can share a book with your child, even if you don't, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, but even if you don't speak the language and the book is in English, you can still share that book and look at the pictures and talk about it and still have a really great conversation to have with Cliff. We also had send kids to Camp Exclamation Point. This is a week-long free camp for kids whose parents are migrant farm workers. That happens each year, and kids that attend there do participate in story events, storytelling events, and also receive a book bag at the end, and also receive books through Cliff. We worked with the Franklin County Bookmobile in the past, and that in the past has done farm visits in that area of the state. We aren't currently, but have in the past. We do work with Mentor VT, which is an umbrella mentoring organization statewide, and we're working on with them right now to develop that mentoring program I mentioned. We also work very closely with adult educational and literacy centers, and we're really excited. There's definitely very few upsides of COVID, but one of the changes that we've seen is that because of the fact that they have had to move to a much more virtual model, Typically, if a student is in an area, we have to refer them to that AEL center in that part of the state. But now that the borders between different parts of the states, different counties have sort of been blown up, a student that may be in Orleans County one week and then Addison County the next week, but had started taking English classes through Nichols, for example, may still be able to continue them through that program, even though they're in a different part of the state. So we're working on that, which is exciting. And the last one is a really fantastic program called Mi Vida Mi Voz, which is a storytelling conference. We did it for the first time in 2019. And it works with students with a focus on literacy, absolutely. Great. So this is just sort of an overview about how we use technology already. There is a really significant need, and I'm sure everyone is aware of this in Vermont, the need for access to internet, particularly in rural communities where farm workers are located. That has been really important and a conversation that we've been having quite often. We have a virtual English online program, which is great. We do online tutorings, and that goes over well. We just got 25 tablets and 13 hotspots that we're providing to sort of enhance the ability for students to access available resources. We also spend a lot of our time advocating to ensure that students are able to connect with resources available through their schools. And certainly that role of an advocate is a great one for a librarian to fill. And I'm sure many of you do it already in collaboration with schools that are in your area, just ensuring that students that need that extra support are receiving it. We're working with Cornell to create an online pro-dairy program. We do a lot of online mental health resources and counseling visits that we provide to farm workers, and telehealth is growing. And this is just to kind of reiterate how beneficial technology can be. And certainly, as mentioned in the chat, the ability to access library resources remotely is something that would be really great for farm workers because of that, all of the barriers that we went through. So just thinking about what has worked well in the past and what's already. I just wanted to share this really quickly. This is a really fantastic project. It's called El Viaje Moscato, or the Most Costly Journey. And they're comic books that are available in both English and Spanish. They were developed by a bunch of different artists and in collaboration with a bunch of different organizations listed here. They are based on actual stories that were told to members of our staff by migrant farm workers. And they're a really great conversation piece where sometimes it's easier to talk about somebody else's story than maybe your own story. And so we use that as a way to open up conversation. If you wanted to have these in your library, just for anybody that was interested in reading them, then that would be a fantastic way just to make them available, and not only for farm workers, but also just members of the community that may be interested in learning more about this population. And the literacy level is fairly low too, so it's something that, you know, most individuals are able to read. And you can see the list of different topics they go through on the left-hand side there. And then just in terms of if you are interested in connecting more with migrant farm workers, we have a population, we have a staff that works statewide, and these are the different individuals that work within the different areas of the state with the migrant education program and also the Bridges to Health program. So Becca Hain in Central West Addison area, Monica Pineda is in the NEK, Jeffrey Meyer is the Northwest Regional Coordinator. He's actually ending his position on October 14th, but Jeff is going to be working part-time through November 19th, and we're hiring somebody new for his role. We don't have as many students in Central East and South Vermont, but Sarah still covers that part of the state. So if you want to reach out to any one of these individuals and are interested in connecting more, then you could send them an email, or absolutely send me an email. So I just wanted to share a really quick story. This is a of ours. She participated in the GED program that we facilitate. And this is a poem letter that she wrote regarding her experiences. And I'll just give you a second to read through Gladyss's story. So Gladyss completed her GED, and she was very excited to do so. And it was really inspirational to see the amount of work she put into it and how determined she was. She's just a very fantastic person, and we're really happy that we had the opportunity to work with her to achieve that. This is a kiddo that we worked with, and this is just a little bit about his story and how we provided support. That's him on the left-hand side attending a Cliff event, and on the right-hand side receiving some tutoring from a staff member of ours. So it just gives a sense in terms of what the educational needs were for Martine. Great. So that's my contact information, my email address, my cell phone number. As well, we have a Facebook page. You can also find more information on UVM Extension's website. And definitely feel free to reach out. We're really eager to connect and find additional ways to support the individuals that we work with, and are always eager to find new ways to do that. I just wanted to say thank you to Joy for setting this up. I really appreciate that, and sincerely appreciate your participation today. So yeah, and I'll stop sharing my screen, and if anyone has questions or comments or ideas, feel free to let me know.
Thank you so much, Kelly. This has been great. I know I've learned a lot and taking some notes about what we can share with people that aren't here today. Anybody, if you want to unmute now, there's just a small group here, so feel free to speak and or keep typing in the chat. This is a great opportunity to ask questions if we have them, since we have Kelly here with us.
Yeah, somebody actually just mentioned about New Hampshire. So luckily, there are migrant education programs nationwide in 48 states. I'm trying to remember her name. I'm totally blanking on it, but there is a program in New Hampshire, a migrant education program there. And they certainly would be eager to connect as well. So if you Google migrant education program in New Hampshire, it'll come up easily, I would imagine. Her name is Barb. I can't remember her last name, the director there.
Kelly, I'm wondering if you could recommend, if there were just one thing a library could do, like is there like a sort of top of the list of a thing that a library could do that would have an impact on the population that you work with?
I think if the contact information I provided to regional coordinators, if you were to reach out to that individual and set up a meeting, and I would encourage you to do so, they have a very good sense of the population and the level of needs and interests within your specific area. So for example, if there is a large farm within your area that wanted to do some sort of book exchange program or anything along those lines, then they could help to kind of facilitate that conversation potentially. So I think trying to it's if you have a connection with an actual farm owner and also want to reach out to that individual and start having that conversation, then you could certainly do that as well. And I do think, you know, those really small steps of making an environment welcoming for kids that certainly are more likely to enter the library than necessarily a farm worker who may not be as likely to leave the farm, but putting information up in Spanish and other languages definitely creates a much more welcoming space. And I know a lot of libraries already do that. Let's see.
I just want to say that I put the link in the chat to the place where that sign from the Waterbury Library came from, and that is a great resource for other inclusive signs as well. She makes graphics that have people in different clothing from different cultures and people in wheelchairs and in different languages. So, and it's free. So check out that site and print some things out for your library if you're interested.
Very cool. Someone just asked about if they could reach out to see if there are any families we know of that we could reach out to directly. We could definitely ask. The only thing would be we're covered under FERPA, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with regarding student confidentiality. But if we were to get permission from the family and they said, yeah, that's absolutely fine, we'd love to connect with the library, then we could do that and would be very excited to do so. So feel free to shoot me an email and I'm happy to touch base about what that could look like.
Hi, this is Sharon from Alice Ward Library in Canaan, Vermont. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I definitely have an interest in this program, which is why I attended today. I have a background in agriculture with migrant workers before I was a library director. My in-laws are also large dairy farmers in New Hampshire. So I know about like the CABIC, the co-op meetings and meetings that families go to annually with state representatives, that kind of thing, you know, learning about healthcare options and different things. I would be very interested as a library in attending meetings to reach the employers, to share what libraries can do to help them retain staff, have happy staff, and you know, encourage visits to the library by farmers and migrant farm workers. And I will reach out to Monica. But Joy and I talked about this meeting about a week ago, and that's one thing I've had on my mind.
That's a great idea. Absolutely. And I think, as you know better than anyone, farm owners are very busy people. And so the more, what we've found is if you can be seen as a resource and you're taking something off of their plate, then they're very eager to have that type of partnership too. If you're going to say like, we're going to do this, we're going to take care of it, and it's beneficial to you, to the farm workers that you're employing, then it's usually pretty well received. They're a big fan of our health program for that reason. So that's awesome. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon. This is Joy. I just wanted to say that that's a great asset for libraries in terms of advocating for the things that libraries do and publicizing that and getting that information out to people that might not know about it. So it's, you know, it benefits the migrant farm workers, but it also benefits the library. And so it's just really a win-win. And thank you for bringing that up.
Another thing I try to do in my library, because I'm right on the border, I send books to the customs office that's close to me for anybody who's detained for any reason, such as a flat tire or an expired passport or any other reasons. That happens many times, just a slight, and it's stressful. So I send books there stamped with the name of our library. And one thing I'm curating are picture books with no words at all, because it will cover any reader that is detained that speaks any language. And I have a lot of fun trying to find books with no words because everyone can enjoy them.
That's such a fantastic idea. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate just the opportunity to share a little bit. We really enjoy the work that we do, and I'm sure that similarly you enjoy being able to provide literacy support and educational and just general support to those that are living and working in your communities as well. So we're eager to be a partner in any way that we can. So just, we are here, and we look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you everyone for attending.